Thank you very much for inviting me here. It's a great honor to be able to speak to you all today about a topic that's very close to me after many, many years of being in Azerbaijan. So first of all, let me tell you my story. I was born and brought up in the UK and traveled around a lot in a stable family, stable country. Got to about the age of 20 and Soviet Union broke up, and my father came out to Azerbaijan with one of the first oil companies to come into the country. And over the next few years, I heard a lot about this place, met a lot of Azerbaijani people. By the time I was 25, I had this desire for adventure. I wanted to come and see this country and see what it was all about and maybe try and use my skills and experiences to help in some way. So I came out here full of adventure. My parents didn't tell me, no, you should stay at home and focus on your career, or you should get married. They encouraged me to follow my path. And so I arrived here 20 years ago. And during these years since then, of working with many children and families all around Azerbaijan, I've come to the conclusion that if we want to change society, we have to change the way we raise our children. I've observed many changes during these 20 years. Obviously, the infrastructure has changed completely, many political and economic changes, and society's attitudes have changed a lot over the years. Because of my work building child development services and observing this country's development during this time, I started to notice similarities between how a child develops and how a country develops. So I came to this topic. If we want to change society, we must change the way we raise our children, and I want to explore that further with you now. We're born with millions of brain cells, and between the ages of 0 and 5, the brain cells all start connecting with each other due to the range of experiences that a child has. The 5 senses, everything this child hears, sees, touches, tastes, and smells, feeds into the brain, and all the neural pathways start creating themselves. And the brain literally changes shape and size during these early years. And everything that every experience, every relationship, every new environment that the child enters into, just building the brain more and more to create this foundation for the child's future development, for all their capacity in future. The more variety that we give to children, obviously the more development that they experience. And play is a huge part of that development. It's how children learn. From about the age of, from birth until about 6 months old, this is the sensory stage of play, where all the skin, the nerve endings in the skin send impulses to the brain, so that the child is learning where their body is in relationships in the environment around them. You notice maybe children put everything into their mouth. This is because they're trying to feel and understand what everything is within their grasp. Imagine if we limit that learning. Imagine if we wrap them up too much, or we don't cuddle them or touch them or kiss them. We're limiting their development. We're reducing their opportunity for their brains to develop. From about 6 months old, the child goes through the exploratory stage of play. This is where they're pulling things apart and trying to understand how everything is made, what it's meant to be. You may see a child with a box of tissues and they pull every single one out of the box and ripping them up and having great fun in the process. As a parent, it's very annoying. But if we stop them doing this, we're stopping their development. We're stopping them from learning what it is. We're stopping them from exploring. Imagine if we keep telling child to stop, don't touch, sit still, be quiet. What are we doing to their development? How are we limiting them? From about 15 months old, the child enters the constructive stage of play. This is where they're putting things back together, bricks on top of bricks, and trying to work out how everything comes together. This is when curiosity develops. They're becoming curious about how things work, how they're meant to be. And again, if we stop them, if we tell them to leave it alone, don't touch, we're limiting their curiosity. Often parents use the television as a tool to parent the children. They put their little ones in front of the TV, thinking that maybe they're learning something from the screen. But they're not. These pictures are going past their face, like they're passive. Children learn through action. They learn when you talk to them, when they see the mimics in your face. And the television is just a passive picture for them. And it's amazing what we've seen in our work over the years is how many children come to us with delayed speech because their parents didn't talk to them when they were little, when they were in this communicating stage, learning how to form words, sounds. The parents thought, well, they can't talk back to me. Why I should talk to them? Why I need to? What's the point? But that's the time when they're learning. That's the time when the neural pathways are all connecting. And we must talk to the children. Otherwise, we're limiting their development. So during this constructive phase of play, we often tell children, stop, don't touch, don't mess around, be quiet, sit still. Imagine how that must feel. You're a child and and you desperately want to touch something and you're always being told, don't touch. Soon you'll stop wanting to touch. Soon you'll stop wanting to explore. What is that part of your brain stops developing? What will that do to you as an adult if you just stop learning how to explore things? From about 2.5 years old, children go through the through the social stage of play. This is where they're playing with other children, communicating, sharing their toys. They often pretend play. How many of you here, you pretended to be a Superman when you were a child or a princess? I mean, my son pretended he was a dog for 2 years. I could have told him, stop it. What will people think? That's so silly. Come on. And I would be limiting his opportunity to develop his imagination. When pretend play, if you allow a child to explore with pretend play or in any type of play, they're entering this world where they can create a strong and powerful imagination. But if we limit them because we're worried about what other people think, what are we doing to them as an adult? We're already pressurizing them to conform to stereotypical behavior from when they're so little. But it's amazing how often we allow what other people may think to tell our children what to do. They're developing their emotional bonds at this time. Empathy for others, learning about how they feel about themselves, about things around them. But if we limit them because of our fears, what kind of people are we creating? What kind of society are we creating? When my son was about 3 years old, 11 years ago now, we traveled to Ganja. We were sitting at the airport, and every other child in the airport was sitting quietly and still. They weren't moving. And my child was up and down, asking questions, talking nonstop, and just being quite hard work. You know, when you're traveling, you want a peaceful time, but not when you've got a curious, adventurous little 3-year-old. I could have told him to sit down, be quiet, or smacked him if he protested. It happens. But I had to let him explore. I had to let him be curious, because I know that is the way their brains are developing, they're learning, and I want him to grow up to be a curious and imaginative adult. But imagine if I didn't. Imagine if I made him sit still. What would that be doing to his brain development? And what does that do for society's development overall? I asked my Azerbaijani colleague who was traveling with us at the time, I said, what's the difference in behavior between my son and these other children? Why? And she goes, Gwen, that's the Soviet training from childhood, so they grow up to be an easy-to-control citizen. I was thinking, gosh, what is the impact? It really made me think about the impact of ideology on how children are raised. So political ideology or religious ideology do have a strong influence on how children learn and how they grow up, what kind of adults they become. For example, communism or religious ideology, they're all about limiting individual development because the ideology is about serving the state or serving God. And I'm not judging that in any way. I'm just saying that that is an influence on how children grow. But Azerbaijan is moving towards market economy now more and more, which is part of capitalist ideology. And that needs creative and free thinkers in order to develop a strong economy. It demands inclusive approaches, so women, disabled children, and anybody else that is excluded by strict ideologies can participate and help to grow society, grow the development. You'll see this set of pictures here, as one of my colleagues sent to me. It's showing how a girl is being raised, being told what to do, what not to do, being controlled, her choices are being limited, preparing her for a future of being controlled by a husband. And this is culturally very common. And I ask why? Are we so worried about what other people may think about our family that we treat half the population like this, that we repress half the population? The government in Azerbaijan doesn't put any barriers in the way of female empowerment. It encourages women in powerful positions. It plays a valuable role in encouraging girls to go into education, to stay in education, to work, and to enter politics. So it's us who are putting the limits. It's parents who are putting the limits in front of children. And I'm not saying this because of some kind of feminist agenda. It's just that we raise girls and they become mothers, grandmothers, mothers-in-law. And it's important for them to be aware about how children develop. So all children, boys and girls, grow up and have the same opportunities to choose, to be adventurous, to have curiosity, to have imagination and explore that. Change is inevitable. We can either resist it and stick to the past, limit our children's development, or we can embrace it and learn as much as we can about how children develop and encourage them to be creative, imaginative thinkers and doers in society. Too often people say, oh, it's government's responsibility to change society. But it isn't. It's all of our responsibility. We all play a part in this. And for this reason, I've come to the conclusion after my 20 years of work in Azerbaijan that if we really want to change society, we have to change the way we raise our children. Thank you very much.